Winter had fallen over Yunjin Fortress like a long-forgotten hush. The wind wandered through the high towers, carrying whispers of lives once lived, now buried beneath snow and silence. Snowflakes drifted through the sky like soft ash, settling gently on stone walls that remembered too much and spoke too little. And deep within those walls, where the world had turned its face away, a melody stirred the air. They called her Yueqin, the blind musician. Once, her music had graced the grandest halls. Once, her songs had echoed through mountains and markets, stirring hearts, moving armies, and giving the weary strength to stand again. Her most haunting melody, one she played only once, was said to bring generals to tears and make stone-faced soldiers drop their swords. It became known as the Forbidden Melody. The emperor had feared it, not because it called for blood, but because it awakened something more dangerous: hope. And hope, he believed, was a spark too costly to let live. So he caged her, not with iron, but with silence. He ordered her taken to Yunjin Fortress, where the snow never melted and time forgot to pass. There, she would be a ghost with a name, buried before death ever claimed her. She did not weep. She did not beg. Instead, she waited. And while the world turned and seasons slipped by, Yueqin sat in her cell, sightless, but never blind to beauty. She did not speak. She did not scream. But at night, when the walls stopped listening, she played. A melody, soft and sorrowful, like winter's breath on glass. And one night, someone heard it. His name was Wen Yan. Once, he had been a captain, steel-eyed, sword-sure. He had fought for glory, for country, for an emperor who now barely remembered his name. His reward had been disgrace, branded by failure and a scar down his face. He had lost brothers to war, and himself to silence. Now, he was a jailer in a fortress of ghosts. He first heard the music while making his rounds, notes floating down the corridor like lanterns on water. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but dreams didn't echo. Dreams didn't reach into your chest and press where your heart used to be. He followed the sound to her door. She didn't know he was there, and he said nothing. The next night, he returned. He stood in the shadows, listening. Her hands danced over an invisible zither, her fingers coaxing sound from memory alone. He wondered how someone could pour so much soul into music when their body was fading away. Night after night, he came. He never spoke, but he listened, like a dying man drinking from a spring. And then, one night, her music stopped. It was not the absence of sound that startled him, but the weight of it, the silence left behind. He stepped into her cell. She sat facing the narrow window, where snowflakes still danced through the dark. "Why did you stop?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. She tilted her head, her unseeing eyes turned skyward. "Because the snow is falling," she said, "and it's too beautiful to be drowned by music." He followed her gaze. The courtyard beyond lay cloaked in white. The snow fell not with fury, but with grace, soft, soundless, sacred. "You cannot see it," he said. "No," she replied, a small smile on her lips, "but I can hear it." He didn't understand how, but he believed her. In her world of darkness, she had found the silence within snow, and it had stilled her music. From that moment on, they began to share the silence between them. He brought her stories, some carved from truth, others softened by memory. Tales of soldiers who sang before battle, of stars that watched them fall, of old songs hummed at campfires, now forgotten by the world. She gave him pieces of her past, a childhood by a silver lake, reeds that swayed with the wind, a mother who sang lullabies in spring, a teacher who once told her, "Play as if no one is watching, and everyone is listening." Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't, but always she played, and he listened. One night, her voice broke gently through the stillness. "I've loved too many things I couldn't keep." He didn't answer. He understood. Then came the emperor's decree. She was to play the forbidden melody once more, before a crowd, in the open, beneath the cold gaze of the imperial court. He wanted the people to hear the melody one last time, not as rebellion, but as surrender. A final act before her death, disguised as performance. Wen Yan received the scroll. Its wax seal was colder than snow. He went to her cell. She was already waiting. "I will play," she said, before he could speak, "as I always have." He stepped forward, his fists trembling. "But it will kill you." She gave him a look both soft and sad. Some songs aren't meant to end gently. That night, as snow fell again, he led her into the courtyard. She wore his cloak. Her feet were bare. In his hands, he held a flute, one he had carved in silence, shaped with care. A gift he never dared give until now. "I don't know how to play," he said. She smiled. "Then let the silence between the notes speak for you." He lifted the flute. The first note trembled like a newborn fawn. But it reached her. She closed her eyes, and the snow listened. The square was full when morning came. Nobles in fur-lined robes, soldiers in stiff armor, the emperor on his raised throne, wrapped in velvet and pride. Yueqin stood at the center, her white robes billowing like a dying flame. She raised the flute to her lips, and she played. Her final song rose into the winter air, notes carried on frost and breath. It was not a melody of defiance, but of memory, of a world once full of laughter, of loss too deep for words, of love never spoken. It reached the people like snowfall, soft, steady, undeniable. Some wept openly, some stood frozen. And Wen Yan, at the edge of the crowd, let the last note bury itself in his heart. Then Yueqin fell. She did not cry out. She simply folded into the snow, as if she had always belonged to it. The emperor called it illness, but everyone knew. She had played her heart into the wind, and it had carried her away. Years passed. Far from palaces and prisons, in a quiet village by a frozen stream, stood a small music house. Children came to learn, and every evening, an old man played a song none of them knew the name of, but all of them remembered. On a shelf near the window sat a peachwood flute, its surface worn smooth by time. Carved into its side were the words, "For Yueqin, who taught me to hear the silence." Some love stories don't need to be lived to be real. Some songs are too beautiful to last. Yueqin loved the silence between the notes. Wen Yan loved the silence she left behind. In the end, it wasn't the melody that endured. It was the stillness that followed.